Grab your Dutch and come and meet the Juneteenth Jamboree. Man, they really pitch a ball. Load of wigs, the jobs and all. Everything is strictly free. The Juneteenth Jamboree. There's no shirking, no one's working. Everybody stop. Gums are chopping, corks are popping, doing the Texas hop. If you really want a spree, chicks galore, I'll guarantee. Grab your Dutch and come at me, the Juneteenth Jamboree. Yeah.
Juneteenth is here, and the Greensboro Public Library wants to share in the celebration. Juneteenth is always cause for celebration, and as with other holidays, it is enriched by the greatest possible awareness of its history and context. The preeminent fact is that June 19, 1865, is the day that declared slavery over in one of the far corners of the United States, southeastern Texas, in Galveston. The formal announcement was delivered by Union General Gordon Granger with the authority of 2,000 troops at his hand. Not allowing any chance for the order to be misunderstood, it read in part, "In the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and former slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor." June 19th has been revered ever since. Martin Luther King Jr. and others recognizing that the Emancipation Proclamation was truly the vehicle that delivered freedom and equality in the manner that the Declaration of Independence had promised. On the night of the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation, abolitionists in Boston came together for a huge gathering, Frederick Douglass calling it a worthy celebration of the first step on the part of the nation in its departure from the thraldom of the ages. That was January 1st, 1863. The war was still raging. And so it was 2.5 years later that General Granger delivered Order Number 3 in Galveston, Texas. And so June 19th is recognized as the day when that promise of emancipation came to all the states in the Union, the end of slavery as an American institution. This calls for gathering, communion, foods, festivals, music, stories, memories, and sharing. The first calls for celebrating this event and occasion were in Texas, and there is a strong history of Juneteenth festivals in Houston and the greater area around it. Heading towards Dallas from Houston, one finds the city of Mejia, where Juneteenth has been celebrated annually since 1899. But the festivities have been going in cities large and small all across the country for over a century. The information in the video was put together almost entirely with resources available from the Greensboro Public Library. You can take advantage of the resources available at your local library to find out more about historical topics such as Juneteenth and anything else. Here are a few of the resources available from us that will help you gain insight and more when you take advantage of them. From our Books and Media page, you can access our inventories of digital downloads like Libby for ebooks and audiobooks like On Juneteenth, the new release of essays by Annette Gordon Reed. Freegal for music and poetry, where you can discover great titles across all genres like Gladys Fatso Bentley's rousing Juneteenth Jamboree. And Canopy for topical films and documentaries.
If you really want to play, these cats set aside a day. Grab your dozen, come at me, Juneteenth Jamboree. Man, they really
Moving over to the Research tab, you can dive into categories such as General History at the History Study Center, book recommendations at Novelist Plus, newspaper and magazine articles to help build context at U.S. Newsstream, relevant examples of poetry at any of our 4 different poetry tabs, African American poetry, 20th century African American poetry, and 20th century American poetry. The Emancipation Proclamation had 4 enduring results. First, it gave force to the executive power to change conditions in the national interest on a broad and far-reaching scale. Second, it dealt a devastating blow to a system of slaveholding and an economy built upon it, which had been muscular enough to engage in warfare on the federal government. Third, it enabled the Negro to play a significant role in his own liberation with the ability to organize and to struggle, with less of the bestial retaliation his slave status had permitted to his masters. Fourth, it resurrected and restated the principle of equality upon which the founding of the nation rested. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, September 1962.
There's no shirking, no one's working, everybody stop. Guns are chopping, corks are popping, doing the Texas hop. That's to kill from head to feet, baskets full of food to eat. You can't get this on your TV. The Juneteenth Jamboree, the Juneteenth Jamboree, the Juneteenth Jamboree.
I'm Amy, and I'm here with Tatiana to present a Juneteenth reading list that is unique to Greensboro Public Library because all of the titles in this list are available in our regular circulation collection as well as our expansive book club collection. Here are our recommended titles.
The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. This book illustrates the Great Migration from the perspective of three varied individuals. It includes historical details about how they traveled to their new homes and the culture that grew there. The Great Migration occurred from the 1910s to the 1970s, when over 6 million African Americans moved from the South to the North for a better life. Homegoing by Ya Jessie. Two half-sisters, Essie and Effia, lived in Ghana in the 18th century. While they lived in close proximity to each other, they had completely different lives. Essie was sold in the slave trade and started a family in America. Effia is married off to a British governor and lives in comfort. Each chapter reveals the perspective of a different relative and switches back and forth from Ghana and America. Highlighted in red on the map of Africa is Ghana. The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Born into slavery on a plantation, Hiram becomes involved in the Underground Railroad while looking for his mother. This novel incorporates magical realism and tells the familiar story of runaway slaves seeking northern freedom, but with a slight twist. The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Cora was born in Georgia and forced to work on a plantation until she meets Caesar, who tells her about the Underground Railroad. They decide to escape, and their journey does not go according to plan. The Nickel Boys, also by Colson Whitehead. Elwood tries to live his life right while under the care of his grandmother. An unfortunate mistake causes him to be sent to Nickel Academy, where he's promised to be reformed. Rampant with abuse in multiple forms, the academy is based off of a real reform school in Florida. The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Jarvis Cotton's great-great-grandfather could not vote as a slave. His great-grandfather was beaten to death by the Ku Klux Klan for attempting to vote. His grandfather was prevented from voting by Klan intimidation. His father was barred by poll taxes and literacy tests. Today, Cotton cannot vote because he, like many black men in the United States, has been labeled as a felon and is currently on parole. Mass incarceration is a new slavery in this critique of the American caste system. Beloved by Toni Morrison. Setha is haunted by the loss of her daughter by her own hands and struggles to move forward. This highly revered novel details the brutality and inhumanity of slavery. When They Call You a Terrorist by Patrice Kahn-Cullors, Asha Bandele, and Angela Y. Davis. This is the autobiography of a black child raised by a single mother in an impoverished neighborhood of Los Angeles who later co-founded the Black Lives Matter movement. It is an empowering account of survival, strength, and resilience, and a call to action to change the culture that declares innocent black lives expendable. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass by Frederick Douglass. Born a slave in approximately 1818, Douglass taught himself to read and write. After escaping to the North, he writes a series of autobiographical memoirs that recalls the harrowing details of slave life in the American South. Juneteenth by Ralph Ellison. Published posthumously, Juneteenth, short for June 19th, lacks the structure of a fully formed novel, but includes important dialogue and history as it relates to the day of remembrance and celebration that is also called Jubilee Day. The news of the Emancipation Proclamation came to Texas over 2 years after it was made. The city of Greensboro recognizes Juneteenth as a holiday, starting this year, 2021.
Thank you for watching. If you're interested in checking out a book club set, which typically contains about 15 copies, please contact me via email or telephone. Email is the preferred method of contact. One person in the group must have a library account that is in good standing. Please provide at least a week's notice when requesting titles to ensure that the request can be filled.